Hi everyone, Boris Johnson is now our new Prime Minister. In this video, I will be analysing his Vedic astrology charts. The depth of information that we can gather here is truly astounding. We can see information about his future, our future, and even Brexit. So let's get started. I just want to also add that this is not in any way politically motivated. I am being objective, whatever my personal feelings are. Secondly, if you're into Western astrology, you'll find it slightly different, but stick with it. You may find it illuminating. So, when was Boris born? So Boris Johnson was born on the 19th of June 1964 at 2 p.m. in New York. That's a great birth time to go with. I've actually checked Varga charts for 5 to 2 and 5 past 2 just to check accuracy. They're fairly stable. We can't go beyond the D9 and the D10, however, but still so much to dig into. Let's get started. So, Boris Johnson was born with Virgo rising. This is exactly congruent with his career as a journalist. Mercury, the ruler of his Lagna, is in the 9th house. Now, Virgo is a very intelligent and clever sign in many ways, and Virgo gives great talent with the written work and analysis. Mercury, his ruler, is in Taurus, and very interesting from a Vedic point of view, is the highest degree planet. That means his Atmakarika. The Atmakarika planet is called the king of the horoscope. And he is now, as I'm going to shortly be talking about, in the Dasha. He's just entered the actual period in his life when Mercury rules his life. Therefore, it's not surprising that he has become king, if you like, in terms of becoming a prime minister. In the Vedic terms, we have to translate them into modern everyday life. Okay, so he is a ruler for sure, and that was his destiny. It's very easy to see. He started this particular dasha 2 years ago, and it goes on until 2030. That doesn't mean he'll be prime minister until 2030, guys, but it shows that this was his destiny, his Atmakarika, his ruling planet. He was destined to be king, and I believe he said, as a young child, I'm going to be a king of the world. Well, obviously he's going to be our prime minister, and that's what he is now, and therefore his destiny is tied up with Mars, because Mars is also in Taurus. Let's just shortly talk about these two planets here. Mercury in Taurus, Mars in Taurus, as his ruling planet, gives him a love of life. This man is all for wine, women, and song. Let's put it that way. Okay? He loves the goodies of life. He's slightly plump, very much in tune with Taurus, which has a tendency to put on weight. So all of that absolutely resonates. Mercury and Mars gives him a challenging and somewhat controversial tone in his journalism and sometimes in his speech. Okay? And that can cause him some trouble, as we know. The moon, however, in Libra is a soothing tone in Boris Johnson's chart. The moon in Libra is a people pleaser. The most important thing for this individual, Boris Johnson, will be to please people. He wants to be liked. It's a big part of his psyche. He is also a superb team player. Libra rules teams. He works best in a team. And we always hear about Team Boris, don't we? It's so that, this is his innate character. He needs to be surrounded by people who support him. He needs that supportive group. And he works very well. He's a great delegator, a superb talent there. This is the house of speech in the Vedic chart. He has a soothing voice. You may not like the sound of Boris Johnson's voice if you don't like the guy, but the point is, he does have a very soothing voice, a calm voice. He's not an agitated speaker, and this all comes from Libra. A charmer. He's a charmer because this is a sign of charm personified. Now let's get a little more deeper into the big karmic planet Shani. Lord Shani is in the 6th house of his chart. In Vedic astrology, this is superb. Saturn works so well in the 6th house. what does he do? He removes the obstacles, he removes diseases, and he removes enemies. It's so strong in this sign of Aquarius that I would say that any open rival will be defeated by this man. He can defeat any open rival. And as I'm going to talk about a little bit in the next slide, when we look at his Dasha period, when he was actually the mayor of London, he was in this Dasha. He easily defeated his rivals. Now, let's analyze the 10th house. This is the house of career, of your status in life. Boris Johnson has the Sun, Venus, Rahu. What a combination. Very close together in Gemini. He talks the talk, that's for sure, because Gemini is about talking the talk. What he says is mesmerizing, attracts people, inspires people. He gives energy to people from how he talks to people in the public arena. But here's the question: how much substance will there be? How much of that talk will walk the walk? Rahu is a deceptive planet. Anybody who's born with this Rahu in the 10th house is going to have some real issues around leadership. Leadership is a new area for you in this life, and that's the same for Boris Johnson. He's not a natural leader. He's a delegator. He's a team player. And so this causes him some problems. Leading from the front, really walking the walk is going to be rather difficult for him. Venus and the Sun, I'm not going to talk about his love life because that would not be ethical here. I'm not going to go there. There's so much you can see, but I'm not going into it because Venus and the Sun are combust. They are exactly on the same degree. This means that his love life burns him out. I'll just say that much. It absolutely burns him out. You may say it burns out the women who are with him as well. Either way, it's a tough area of his life for him in some ways. There's some other things to be seen, but I'm not going to go into that. The Sun in the 10th house is superb, of course, because it gives you a really successful career. And of course, he's had that. So what does all this mean? What does this stellium of planets in the 10th house mean? It means that Boris Johnson is a sort of person who can rise very, very quickly and fall as quickly. I need to talk about Rahu here. Rahu is the kingmaker planet, not like the Atmakaraka. This is something which is for everybody. I want to bring in our last Prime Minister here. It's very worthwhile to just hear this. She was in her Rahu Dasha. And she is in her Rahu Dasha still, and she was born with Rahu with Saturn. That's a very challenging combination. But she came to prominence so quickly. I'm Theresa May, and here I am standing as your Prime Minister. And in no time, there she was as our Prime Minister. But within 3 years, she came down from that to in tears outside Downing Street, to the absolute pits, from the top to the bottom, from the absolute, king, if you like, queen, if you like, to completely finished. And her reputation is in tatters. I've heard it said that she was the worst Prime Minister in history. That's really cruel, and that is actually what Shani and Rahu can do. Now, we have to see here that actually Boris Johnson, does not have Shani with Rahu, but he does have Rahu in the 10th house, which is the natural house of Lord Shani. So we need to take that into consideration. There is something of the burn and collapse here about Boris too. He has to be really careful that he doesn't burn out. He doesn't overpromise. Rahu does that. It likes to promise. That was Theresa May, wasn't it? Okay, Brexit means Brexit, but actually did it. So she overpromised. Rahu does this. It makes you go for the jugular. It makes you be a big thinker, thinking big, seeing the big horizon. But the problem is, how much of that can you deliver? It didn't work for Theresa May, and Boris Johnson has to be very, very careful. Now, Rahu has a problem when we make some sort of predictions in Vedic astrology. I've made a video about 3 or 4 years ago on David Cameron. Actually, it was about 4 years ago now, on David Cameron and Ed Miliband. There, it was very obvious for Ed Miliband there was a huge Rahu effect, which can obscure things even for the person who is reading the chart. Rahu is not always negative, not always at all, but he has a timestamp. And where is that timestamp going to be for Boris Johnson? That's where we need to look at the dashas, the great way in which in Vedic astrology we can make accurate predictions about people's future. Let's go. So, moving on to the dasha periods of Boris Johnson, it's very crucial to see what a dangerous time he is in now. And then I'm going to look at the transits and the eclipses, which will be momentous for our Brexit as well as his life. So, he is in Mercury dasha and he is in Ketu Antradasha. This means that Boris Johnson is in a very dangerous time now. Yes, he's working hard. He's working his socks off, basically. He is a hard worker. He's a man of absolutely stupendous amount of energy, physical energy and mental energy. But Ketu is actually draining that energy now. This might affect his physical health. How long does this go on for? Until February 2nd next year. So this is a very draining time for him. It's really draining. What can he do to stop that? Not a lot. He has to go with the flow. I would say that this is in his fourth house, his home, his domestic life. And one of the remedies in Vedic astrology for a K2 like this is to get a dog. And I believe he's about to get a dog. Well, he would be really well advised, to have a black dog. A black dog is very fortunate to help this particular K2. More than that, he also needs to take care of the Rahu here because they are always an axis. Rahu is about cats, not just dogs, but cats. He must be very careful to actually take care of any cat in his vicinity. That would be, of course, Larry the cat, who I believe is still in Downing Street. If he ever sees a video, which I doubt, but in any case, he needs to be very careful how he treats that cat. That non-human animal must be absolutely protected and safe. So protect the cat and keep the cat safe and get yourself a black dog. That's the best remedy here, okay? Because Rahu and Ketu always have to do with non-human beings. Now, let's look at the D10 chart. So let's analyse very quickly this D10 chart. The D10 is the opening up of one's career chart. Mercury, Rahu, rising in Virgo. His own ascendant is superb. It is such a strong combination. No wonder he has come to power now under Mercury dash. That is clearly seen. 7 signs away, however, is Ketu, the ruler of his bhukti until February the 2nd. This is very challenging. 7 houses is the Maraka position. Maraka means extreme challenges, real danger for Boris Johnson. Who from? Ketu, Mars rules Scorpio. Scorpio is media influences. So media are going to provide huge challenges for him and huge dangers for him. He has to watch that. And here's the final thing that we absolutely need to consider. Mars is very challenging from those who are openly with him. They are people who are facing him across the cabinet table. He will also need to watch out for those sort of challenges, even within his own cabinet. So very challenging for Boris Johnson. Finally, let's see the transits. These will really give us the key dates up until next year when things will shift. Here we go. Finally, and not least of all, the transits and how they affect Boris Johnson and Brexit. These are huge. Boris Johnson has had a very favourable time recently. He's had 2 grahas in his favour. he's had Saturn in the third from the moon and Jupiter in the second from the moon. These are supremely favourable positions in Vedic astrology. They support him and give him such great opportunities, as we have just seen occur, obviously. But they're going to shift, and it will slightly mean that he is destabilized. What's the first shift? November the 6th, when Jupiter moves into his third house, not a favourable house. And then Saturn is going to move from the third to the fourth, which is a sort of mini Sadisati beginning at the end of January. And for 2.5 years, this will unsettle his domestic life. And if he is still our Prime Minister, that will also have an effect on our country as well, because the fourth house is the country in Vedic astrology. So it's destabilizing for Boris Johnson. Therefore, if he wants to have an election, or he is forced to have a general election, for him, the best time would be for that to happen before November the 6th. That's for sure. Now, here's the key thing. Boris Johnson came to power on an eclipse cycle in his 10th and 4th house in July this year. The next cycle is at the end of December and the beginning of January next year. And that time will be seminal. It's absolutely critical because eclipses turn things around, eclipse things 360 degrees, and the sun is impacted, and that sun is the ruler of his 12th house. Now that can have two main impacts. First of all, this is the house of foreign powers. The EU obviously comes to mind. Also, this is a house of hidden enemies and all sorts of, behind the scenes activities. So something really big and seminal will be shifting at the end of December and the beginning of January for Boris Johnson. And this will absolutely have an impact on our government. So here's the thing. Will he be eclipsed, or will the EU be eclipsed, or both? Something is certainly going to happen around the big situation of the Brexit, and those are the key dates. And you're thinking, well, what about October the 31st? Well, that date, exactly the same as March 29th, is a really destabilized date. I don't know who chooses these dates. Maybe somebody's got some astrologers somewhere decided to get the most destabilized time, but they seem to be very good at choosing these dates. The end of October and the end of March had a few of the planets in a very dangerous, what we call Gandanta position in Vedic astrology. It's very difficult to start something successfully on such a date as that. So it's the end of December, beginning of Jan, when things will shift hugely for Boris Johnson. They're the dates he has to get past, and as I say, he has to get to February 2nd to have a smoother time in some ways. So I hope this was interesting to you all. If it was, sub to my channel, Starting Out Again, and my next video coming up soon will be Jeremy Corbyn with the same sort of analysis. Okay, goodbye for now.